I bet you've been there. Work hard, play hard, climb that ladder, go out with the crew for a few drinks once in a while to celebrate. Can you relate to that? Do you know somebody else who maybe could relate to that? It's a lifestyle. You start out having a few drinks to go celebrate your successes. You work hard, it's stressful. Pretty soon you're going out more often, having a few more drinks. Next thing you know, unintentionally, you're finding yourself having a drink every night just to get to sleep. And then, maybe it's even every morning to be able to get going and function that day. You don't like it, but you can't stop. Jeff went through that, lasted 5 years that way. But fortunately, that was 5 years ago, and Jeff is with us in the studio today. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
What we want to do today is hear your story, what happened, what it was like going through that. And through that, we will look for God's story in your life as well. Because I know your story is not that unique. It's personal to you, but a lot of people can relate. And it is really encouraging to hear when someone survives a tragedy like that, a serious trial, and their faith grows. And I know that's your story. So take us back. Where did this all start? How did this begin?
Well, back in my younger days, I was always a hard drinker. I started drinking at a young age, 13, hanging out with the guys, but then went to college, and fraternity and drinking just seemed to be the norm. And then the Army didn't introduce alcohol, but continued with the alcohol. And so, yeah, it started young and just progressed through the years.
And then you didn't stay in the Army.
I did not. I was recommended by supervisors in the Army to get out of the Army and do the same job as a civilian, and to what they always say would make more money and better benefits and less stress of travel, and not travel, but transfers and things like that. So, yeah, actually 5 years active duty combined, and then 28 as a civilian with the Department of Defense.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you serve in any really exciting duty stations?
I did in the active duty. I did a year in Korea. I'm not so sure that was exciting, but it was a good experience reflecting back. I was young. I was maybe 23. So, and then a couple of different tours, Massachusetts and Texas, in the Army. And then as a civilian, the civilian career started in Chicago. That lasted 5 years. And then Phoenix for almost 10. St. Louis for 13, 15, if you do the math. And that's where I retired out of.
What brought you to Arizona?
Well, originally we were in Phoenix from 1993 to 2003. And so when we left St. Louis, again, part of the story, we didn't leave together, my wife and I. We left separately and then ended up together here again. So I knew Phoenix was too hot and too flat. So I liked the mountains. And then, of course, treatment center brought me here as well, to Prescott. And I've stayed.
I heard you say in there that you were separated for a while from your wife. So that makes me want to ask about your job at that time. Was that a stressful job?
It was. If I do the math, I think I did 10 years as a street agent, where I actually worked cases and investigations and was pretty much my own boss, depending on what case I worked and who I was working with. Then I got into management. So I climbed the ladder in the management ranks. So it was nice because I thought I could train newer agents, but then as I climbed the ladder, I was further removed from investigations, and I was so far removed from investigations toward the end. It was a paper pushing computer job. at that point.
Investigations were the fun part, and it sounds like you like helping other people, training new agents.
Correct. Because I always had a good training agent, had a good mentor at whatever office I went to. I thought I wanted to follow that role to help the younger people come through and learn from the mistakes I made as a young agent. And so, but again, the last 5-7 years was even far removed from that.
Where was God through all that? Were you in church as a kid? What was your faith like? What was religion to you back then?
It was forced upon us, and forced Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not so sure it was forced. My parents didn't go. I think thought I had to go, so I would go on my own and fake that I went. And I always thought I thought I earned everything by myself. There was no God in my life there was no God in my life even when I went to church because I didn't understand it. And
well, let me see if I've got this straight. So you didn't have to go to church, but you went to church, but you didn't really go to church. You didn't go because you were skipping out on church, just looking like you were going to church. It sounds like you were trying to please somebody else.
And I'm not sure who, because
wow.
My parents, I don't think, really even thought about it, which is strange because I was thinking a little bit about this prior to coming here. Is my grandparents on my mom's side were strict Catholics, and they were, church every week. But we never talked God, never talked religion. It just wasn't something in our family. So again, I thought it was forced upon me because of my grandparents type thing, and just to make it look good.
Okay. If you had to rank how close you felt to God at that time, 0 to 10, 10 being super close and tight and 0 being 0, what is it?
It's 0.
It was a 0
It was a 0.
Despite church in your life, kind of.
Correct.
Okay. Well, so then with this stressful job, how did that progress into a dependence on alcohol? And you mentioned already you started drinking really young, but what really tipped it over the edge for you?
And again, I'm not going to blame it on the career, but it was as I climbed the ladder, there's less and less of us. There was only 6 positions in our whole country, and I was one of the 6. So that, I didn't have an office of other investigators that I used to be when I was a street agent. We would all hang out together and work together. So as you climb the ladder, there's less and less mentors or friends or things. So you learn to be by yourself.
More work, more stress, and more loneliness.
Correct. Again, the politics, the budgets, things like that. Again, so far removed from investigations and having to. And again, I was on the phone with what I call Washington, D.C. daily, and it just wasn't fun anymore. And then when I did have 13 offices I supervised in the Midwest, have to go visit the offices to make sure they're doing things and, check on things, and couldn't drink anymore with the guys. So I learned to drink on my own back in the hotel room and just to numb the frustrations. But yes, I learned to drink away from people, closet drinker, whatever you want to call it, and then put the face back on in the morning and do it all over again.
So, yeah, everything's fine. Just going through the day. I got this. I can handle this.
Right.
Yeah. What did that do to the relationships in your life?
Bad. I again, lost my wife. Not lost, probably not a right word, but definitely estranged. She fully supported me through all this. Always prayed that I would find God. And then the funny story is, my daughter was a rough relationship, and it wasn't as bad as I thought, because once I got a little time underneath my belt, and as relationship got back together, she had to remind me that her first 20 years weren't bad. They were good. I put on a good face. I tried to be at every event that I could be at. For the gymnastics, the hockey games, you name it. Yeah, I was there.
How many kids do you have?
I have two.
Okay.
So again, the guilt I had from my drinking, I thought went back along. It probably goes back further than the 5 years because, it just didn't happen overnight. But again, I had full support from them, even if it was different ways from each one of them. My wife, I retired where she was still working 2 or 3 years. So after I retired, that's when the roller coaster went downhill, and I was in and out of different treatment centers and trying to get sober, but I didn't have the willingness. It was all a farce, and so I would go to a treatment center. I would come back, and my wife and I said, "Well, let's date to see if you can stay sober, and see if we can save this marriage." And then, again, my alcoholic mind would think, "Well, if I'm not going to see her for 3 days, that means I can drink for 2."
Yeah.
And so that didn't work either until I finally surrendered to God.
You mentioned guilt. I can only imagine what that was like.
Especially when I was in and out of different treatment centers when I thought I was trying to get sober. And then, coming home, putting on a different face of not drinking when I was drinking and trying to hide it. Again, I was hiding it. Of course, I wasn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that guilt alone, it was pretty heavy. It was heavy. And I remember the night when it was lifted. I'll never forget it.
Let's hold that thought for a moment. Friends, if you're listening, I want to let you know that, just by the way, I do a workshop to help people who are going through challenges and trials in their own life find clarity and confidence to step out in faith. It's a half-day workshop, and you can check the schedule and find out more about it on my website, GarrettHamlin.com. And before we go forward, I want to remind you, if you are not attending a church right now, if you are, that's great. We have some amazing churches around Prescott area and Northern Arizona, Flagstaff. But if you are not attending right now, I invite you to check out CCV, Christ Church of the Valley. They have a campus in Cottonwood, but they have small home groups all across Northern Arizona. And you can watch their service online from anywhere. And then you go to a home group to connect and fellowship with others. I invite you to try them out on the web at ccv.church. That's ccv.church. And see what happens in your life. Jeff's been telling us about growing up at the church or around the church, but not really in the church. That relationship with Christ, he said, was about a 0 on a 0 to 10 scale. And alcohol started to take over. It affected his relationships, self-esteem, probably fair to say, with guilt. And sounds like we're just about to a turning point. What happened from that point, Jeff?
Yeah, I came to treatment here in Prescott, and I had been to numerous treatment centers prior to that, to include what I call Betty Ford. I thought I could buy my sobriety through that famous treatment center. That didn't work. And then the roller coaster went really downhill, and I ended up in the Salvation Army in Phoenix, which is, I equate a step above jail.
A step above jail?
It was a work program.
Wow.
There was no real treatment. They put you in the warehouse for 10 hours a day to get all the property ready for the Salvation stores. We had 6 cots in a room for 6 guys, and it was 3 meals and a cot, pretty much.
So work was your path to sobriety and a new life.
Correct. And then, so again, I got out of the Salvation Army and thinking I got this and got my own place. My wife finally retired. She was in Flagstaff. I was going to stay in Phoenix. we'd be close by and we could date, save this marriage if I could stay sober. And it was probably 2 months. Gotta look at a calendar, but luckily I had her support because I finally called her one night. I don't recall much of this. She's informed me that I called her and said I wanted help. It was the first time I actually asked for help. I went to all the other treatment centers for other people, not for me. And so when we used to live in Phoenix many years ago, we used to camp a lot on the Mogollon Rim in the Payson area. So we did some research for a treatment center in Payson. They don't have any there. And we found some treatment centers here in Prescott, and been here ever since 2020.
So that moment that you called your wife and said, I need help, that's got to be tough. Okay, we're guys. Like, we've got control. We've got this. We've got ourselves under control, right? And did it feel like you were just admitting, I don't have this, I'm not in control, I really need help? What was that like?
Well, again, the early treatment centers, they talk about that, of wanting to fully surrender or admit you needed help. And again, being military, law enforcement, I, again, thought I had it. You know, we had the house, we had things, I did the finances, we weren't behind in our bills. So I thought I took care of everything and I could fix my disease. And again, I'm sure I was well under the influence when I called her and asked her for help. And I think she actually told me to do the research on my own. How we found the treatment centers here in Prescott, I'm not really sure. Again, looking back now, it's not easy to say, but it was God's plan. He's the one that got me here. When I could finally fully surrender to him, because I hadn't fully surrendered to him yet either.
Yeah. Let's talk about that word, surrender. I'm ex-military as well, United States Army. You were, what branch were you?
United States Army.
United States Army. So surrender is not our favorite word in the military. What did that mean to you at that time? Well, they talked about surrender, and that didn't quite fit.
Yeah, I thought it was complete failure, complete bottom of the bottom of, yeah, I can't do this anymore. But you bring back the military thinking of I lost the battle, and it took me a long time to comprehend that.
Yeah,
where that surrender actually is a good thing depending on what perspective you look at it.
Okay, let's talk about that perspective. I know that you eventually ended up in a Christ-centered rehabilitation program here. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the quick first God shot was I was at a different treatment center, and on Sundays they would take us for hikes. And we were hiking in the mountains here in Prescott, and there's 5 or 7 guys. We're hiking, and one of the guys said, "Wouldn't it be neat if we met the lone survivor of the Yarnell fire?" A lot of the guys didn't know what the Yarnell fire was because a lot of the guys were from out of state. Being law enforcement, being from Arizona, I living in Arizona, I knew what the Yarnell fire was. And
that Yarnell fire, that was 2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
One of those. I think it just had their 11th year anniversary. But anyways, we finally started talking about it and explaining it to the guys, and we said, how would we ever meet Brendan? We're in treatment. It's just not going to happen. That was on a Sunday. Sunday was hike day. Wednesday night they would bring us to a Bible study, to a gentleman's house here in Prescott, started Bible studies. That following Wednesday, from that Sunday hike, across the coffee table at the living room of that Bible study, I met Brendan. So I call that my first God shot.
Yeah.
The first God shot that I listened to.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm sure I had many prior to that. I just never listened to him. He kept me alive. I'd never hurt anybody in my disease. So he told me about his facility, his treatment center called Hold Fast Recovery, being faith-based. And once I graduated, the treatment center I was currently in, which was Decision Point, which I highly recommend as well. It was a strict classroom type treatment center where Hold Fast was more, what I call it, relaxed, where you could, depending on what phase you were in, you could actually still work and live at the house and things like that. But that's when I got introduced to Bible studies, talking about God, and finding out that he was my friend and not the punishing God that I grew up with.
Mm. What other God shots now in retrospect do you think you missed at the time that where God was trying to reach you?
Well, again, I did go to some good treatment centers. And the people at the treatment centers put in a lot of work to help people with our disease. And I'm sure there was plenty of God shots that I never really listened to. But if I go back and reflect, they were there daily. I just never listened to them or heard them or saw them. My eyes and ears were not open. They have since been open.
Yeah, that takes time sometimes.
It does.
Well, where is God in your life now? You grew up around the Catholic Church, zero in real faith. Where's God now? How's that 0 to 10 relationship now?
Oh, it's 10 plus.
10 plus.
Yeah. This what I always call the seed, and again, I don't know verses completely, the different seeds that were on cement or fertile ground or things like that. But I believe the seed was always been there. I think some of the treatment centers were watering my seed as I grew, and both Hold Fast and the Bible studies and the people that I met, the seed just flourished, is how I call it. To include 2013, so I retired in 2015, and the roller coaster really went downhill when I retired. But in 2013, my wife and kids would go to church there in St. Louis. And I always had an excuse not to go.
Mm-hmm.
Cut the grass, whatever. And of course, starting then, I was living behind what sports were on TV, and of course, having a beer. One morning, they were I believe it was Mother's Day. They were getting ready for church. I was in the shower. I completely broke down. I don't know what it was. I went down dressed for church. Family looked at me and was like, "What is going on with you?" I said, "I'm going to go to church." Well, that sermon that day at the church in St. Louis was really talking about baptism. And I thought the pastor was talking directly to me. So I got baptized in 2013. So I think the seed was really buried or starting to get watered then. And again, I don't know if it was a farce. I don't think it was, because I felt him, but I didn't follow through. I didn't put any work into it after that.
Okay.
As they say, faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So, so then again, so from 13 to 20, again, it was in and out, trying to include, I thought I went the Catholic route as well, back to I thought because the Catholic, I was going to morning mass every day thinking I could, I call it force religion on me.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work going in and out of treatment centers for those 5 years. So, my wife and I were going through family counseling at Hold Fast, and we had an appointment with a therapist the next day. So she was down from Flagstaff, spending the night at her camping, because I was at the house, and I got her campsite, helped her get her campsite ready. And next morning, that night, I went home back to the treatment house. And I don't know what it was. My eyes and ears were finally open July 7, 2020. I fully broke down on the porch outside the treatment center house. And that's what I call my full surrender. My eyes and ears were open.
Yeah.
And picked up my wife, Sharon, the next day, and we go to the counseling session. The first thing out of her mouth is, "What's up with you?" And I joke. I don't like to joke, but about sometimes my religion or my relationship, but I said, I think I had a burning bush experience last night. Told her about completely breaking down. And so off to the counseling session we went, and the therapist walked in, and the first thing out of his mouth was the same thing my wife had said: "What's up with you?" I guess you could see on my face, the weight was just lifted,
Yeah.
was just completely lifted off my shoulders, and I felt peace and serenity haven't felt in years, say decades.
I love this moment. I want to dig into this a little bit. You just caught yourself and highlighted its distinction between, uh, I lost it here,
Religion.
religion and relationship. So, what does that mean to you now? What do you understand now about the difference between religion and relationship with Jesus that you didn't understand all those days that you were trying so hard on your own to get control and get things right, if you will?
I really equate religion to task-oriented, checking the box,
Hmm.
what you think is doing the next thing, the next task, um, to earn that trust from God. So I thought I had to earn it by checking the boxes. And that's what I had the different Catholic religion tasks is what I equate religion to. My relationship with Jesus Christ right now is more of a friend, mentor, a person I can talk to and I don't have to earn anything. He's already given it to me. And
Amen.
all I had to do was accept it. And so if I continue to work on my relationship with him and get closer, to include try to understand him sometimes, because there's a lot I finally also surrendered that I just don't understand. I try to understand, I try to read the Bible as a textbook, and it just doesn't work. And again, equate religion and textbook versus relationship in a story.
Oh, I love that. Versus a relationship and a story. Clearly, whenever we love somebody and we know somebody, we want to get closer to them. We want to learn about them. And approaching the Bible not as a textbook, but as just God's story and what he wants us to know about his character. And that's one way to grow in that relationship and to strengthen that bond and that love with Christ, to grow ever more towards our direction to pray without ceasing, for example. You can do that in relationship and grow closer. For you and anybody listening, it doesn't suddenly happen. We don't accept Christ and then suddenly understand the Bible and everything about God. How can we possibly come close to knowing and understanding 1% of this infinite, all-powerful being? So I encourage you on that side. I love that you talk about this relationship with Christ. So you've been through a lot, and I know that just scratches the surface, what we talked about today. As people who are listening to this are very interested in your story because it resonates with them, because it resonates personally, or they know somebody in their own family who's gone through something like this, what advice would you give them based on what you've been through and what you've learned about a relationship with Jesus?
Don't do it. Don't try to do it on your own. Try to, again, find a church. Church shopping's not the right term, but if you can find the right mentor, the right person to talk to, if you ask enough questions, you will find the right person that God has put in front of you to help you down that road. Doing it on your own did not work for me. Trying to figure out the directions just doesn't work. Just ask, just reach out. Don't be afraid. There are people out there. You'll be amazed at how quick the conversation will come up if you just ask.
Yeah.
People aren't afraid to talk about it.
Yes.
I was for a long time.
Especially if God put them in your path. They don't really know it. You don't know it.
Correct.
But if you're willing to step out and ask, you'll find that person that God has already put there.
Exactly. And
Awesome.
I'm been blessed. There's so many here in the Prescott area that help me.
Isn't this a great area?
It really is.
Jeff, thank you so much for talking today and sharing your story of tragedy and trials and the faith that came out of it. What a huge transformation from 0 to 10 plus. Thank
Living
you.
it every day. Thank you.
Love it. Thanks for sharing.
Appreciate it.